So I am here with Ben from Resi, and I'm super excited about it. Ben is the CEO and founder of Resi, which is a technology company that's quickly changing hospitality. So you've been around since 2014. So I'd love to hear a little bit about how you started.
So I think, first of all, thanks for having me, and thanks for a great day. I think this has been amazing. So we started in 2014, and as we got going, the landscape was, I think, a very, very interesting one in the history of food and tech. There was a ton of companies banging away at hospitality technology, mobile payments, ordering, staffing, loyalty, CRM, all kinds of stuff, website. And from our perspective, the most interesting, exciting, challenging, kind of confounding thing that we saw was that there was a ton of companies banging away at it, but very, very little happening. And so, I love what Chip said this morning about how if you build a product and you launch it and nobody uses it, did you launch the product? And that was kind of what we saw happening. And believe it or not, that was sort of an irresistible opportunity to maybe put something in the marketplace and do something differently. So that was what we saw when we got started and why we started.
So I think we also saw Resi evolve a little bit over the last 2 years. So, talk a little bit about where you thought the product should be, and then, how you realized that you built tech for tech's sake in the beginning. I mean, with obviously hospitality in mind, but then I think having conversations with hospitality groups really helped to change the future of the product.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that we saw, very much related to the circumstance of what was happening, and sort of the tech folks banging away at tech, and the hospitality folks dreaming about tech but not actually using any of it, it was that there wasn't a whole lot of dialogue between restaurants and the folks building the tech. And of course, the product we started with was a very simple, if polarizing one. But what we wanted to do was just get going and get in the conversation. My background is in and around the restaurant business. I haven't run restaurants, but in building Eater, I've talked to thousands and thousands of restaurateurs and chefs and spent time with them. And so, we kind of just wanted to get in the conversation. And I think, the thing about Resi that we say, and it's 100% true, is Resi's built by in the industry for the industry. And we can map, as the product has evolved, I can map each of those sort of major releases to, important conversations we had with our partners about what they needed and what they wanted.
Great. So I think it's interesting to say that, last year at this time, I didn't even know Ben. And I've been in the hospitality industry for 3 years, and it's my job every day to be vetting all new technology. So I meet with every new product that comes out, And this is essentially why we started TechTable, was to be able to have the technology and the hospitality groups having the conversations to build the best product. So I think it was about 10 months ago that we sat in a room and I said, all right, what's the latest you're doing? And I think that I started to kind of riff on what I saw as the ideal. We talked about POS data and that there was such a disconnect. And I saw Michael, your CTO's eyes start to light up. And I think we realized that we were really on the same page and onto something really interesting that we could create together. So maybe if you want to start to tell a little bit about the guest profile.
Sure. So I think, again, like for us, the other thing, we can put it up, I guess.
That's
it's
the
right
first
here. This is our prep slide. I think the interesting thing about, like, when we started talking, and this goes back to sort of how, how change is going to happen in this space, what has already been, so what the innovations have been and where we're going, is that you have a technology industry, both our, my team, myself, like, we're obsessed with change and we're obsessed with disruption, which are both buzzwords and sort of like motivators for us. And the restaurant industry is obsessed with, if it's working, don't touch it.
I think that's absolutely true. When I walked into most of our restaurants and I saw the wiring, I thought, don't touch it. But so I think that, we all want change, but, I think that the hospitality industry talks about change, but is resistant to the SOP that comes with that change. And I think, one of the things that I always think about is we have to really be thoughtful about the technology implementation that we do, because the restaurants have no downtime. There's no window to really implement something. So I think when you implement something, it has to be the right tech.
Yeah. So for us, it's like we see the future. It's interesting. We've had a lot of conversations today about the future. I think there's different views on what the future looks like. Our view of the future is that we sort of have to meet in the middle. Like we want, if you heard Nick this morning, like he wants restaurant reservations offices to look like trading floors, right? Like, and OpenTable wants like sort of this sort of AI future, and we want a future. We have our own ideas about the future, and some of that we're about to talk about. But I think the path to the future is kind of the thing that we're the most focused on, because restaurants don't want to change, and because like everybody's obsessed with the future, but we've made so little progress. So I think the point is, it's a long-winded way of saying, like, one of the interesting things about the partnership that Union Square and Resi has embarked upon is that, like, I think we're making some very meaningful incremental steps, and I think it's very much like we're very excited about that as a sort of a process of building technology. So I think, so as we talk about the product now, like, again, our future is, we see the future and getting to the future, importantly, sort of like the path to the future, as being kind of incremental. Like you have to kind of create a set of building blocks, because the industry is not going to go from A to D on its own. That we know. Lots of companies have tried, and we know that's not going to happen. And so the question is, so how do we get from A to D in an orderly fashion, in a way that, it appears as if very little has changed along the way? In essence, how does a tech company kind of meet the restaurant where it's at, right? Sort of in many ways, like go into the past and like hold Union Square's hand into the future. So
Let me actually just interject for 1 second. So I think that it's important for everyone to understand. So with Union Square Cafe, so when I came to USHG, we were looking at 30-year-old restaurants. So, and one was 30 years old and then built up. But it's a lot to try to get them to change and to want to implement new technology when they've been doing something a certain way for so long. So I think as a company with Union Square Cafe, we have this unique ability. As Danny always says, we have a 30-year-old startup. So I think we have an absolute obligation to our guests to open this restaurant with the best technology, the best experience, and just really reevaluate how we can make this just really exciting. And as we talk about meet the guests where they are with technology, whether it's an SMS text to confirm their reservation or saying that they're going to be late and things like that. So I think it's a good time to dig into the product.
Yeah, so what Marina's saying is Union Square Cafe will be using Resi. And we're very proud of that. So we're going to talk through kind of 3 building blocks that we see as fundamental to this product and to essentially the evolution of hospitality technology. Some of it is going to seem incredibly kind of straightforward and familiar, and hopefully in a couple of minutes, some of it may feel a little bit more groundbreaking. But obviously, like, what we're doing here is, if you see the before and after, the before slide is really kind of like the customer profile that everybody has seen on every platform since OpenTable launched. And it's mostly text. It's very little structured data. You're really only as good as the people who are entering those notes and kind of tracking that guest's existence through the enterprise. On the right side is the profile that we're releasing. We think it's a lot more data-centric. We think it's a lot more about structured data, and why that's important. And again, we've also talked a lot about data today. And so for us, everything about data is how do we turn it into something that's actionable. We don't plan on having a whole lot of data compared to what the rest of the platform is that's visible to the restaurant and sort of like meant to be consumed as raw data. We'd like to use data as a means of building product and as a means of building tools that restaurants can use to make their business better, right? Like, here's a super simple example. We're talking about the profile now, but the simplest example is we know for a fact that when it's raining, you're going to see about a 16 or 17% increase in no-shows, right? So if we can see rain 2 days out, you don't have to see a sea of numbers to know that we should be expanding. You should be expanding your book by about 16 or 17%, right? Like you should go to this extent of overbooking by 16 or 17%. That's how we want to start using data, right? Like simple, straightforward things built into the product, single button. So building block number one is the profile that we're looking at. There's a lot more structured data. There's also things like you'll see messages, which is SMS, which is live two-way SMS. Obviously, check integrated, dynamic tags. Some of that'll be manual. Some of those will be tags that are associated with conditions the restaurant set. So if we see if the POS reports to us that this is a person who's ordered a $250 bottle of wine, we'll put a wine tag on the profile. So we're getting into a universe where the profile is a store of structured data and actionable items, versus just a bunch of text. You want me to keep going?
Sure, you can go on.
And so the building block number two is the notification center. We want to, right now, the POS, right, is sort of the place where all of the signals of the restaurant operations live. Order fired, wine order in, check printed, right, all that stuff. The biggest disconnect, and this is the thing that we've been working on for Union Square, and I think it's so incredibly exciting, is that there's also a ton of signal in the dining room if we can just figure out how to turn it into signal, right? Like right now, chits are these little pieces of paper. But when a VIP is seated, that's a signal. When a table is sat for 7 minutes and hasn't put in a drink order, that's a signal. That's a signal that the hospitality is breaking down, right? So the notification center, which we think is going to be the new kind of center of the new control panel, the new like sort of control room for the restaurant, is, and you can see we have a couple slides here. Everything is parceled into something that's happening in the restaurant. Some of it's coming from the POS, some of it's coming from Resi. And by the way, there was a question earlier about POS and about API, open API integration. Like, look at this. We'd like to take your signals. Like, our API is available to anyone who asks for it. Mike is in the audience, mike@resi.com. If you want access to our API, you can have it. We're going to launch a data API as well in the next couple of months. Like, if you have something that's a signal for the restaurant, we want to put it in here. Because we got to take the POS and we got to take what's happening in terms of reservations and hospitality, and to get to where we really want to go with this, it needs to be packaged up into Signal.
I mean, this is what was so groundbreaking for us when we started talking about this, because the industry has talked about that POS is over here and reservations is over here, and now, every single thing in the notification center is, going to be. I would just want to make sure everyone understands that it's systemic.
Right, and so you can extrapolate from what you're seeing on the screen. There's going to be different views in different parts of the restaurant, right? Like there's certain signals that are super relevant to the expediter that the hostesses and the hosts and the front of house staff don't really care that much about, right? There's certain things that GM wants to know. We talked about last night that like with the hot schedules team, like what if we could put overtime alerts in here, right? Because then the managers could know in real time. They could see an alert coming in the same screen. They're seeing a VIP seated and a runner is needed, and a big wine order is in, right? It's really like, we're proud of this and we're excited about this because we think we're finally starting to kind of present a holistic view of the restaurant and what's happening on the screens in the technology. So these are sort of like the local screens, right? We take this a step farther, and again, wait, can I go back? Yeah. So this is building block 2, right? We have all these little parceled pieces of information. Some of it's coming from us, some of it's coming from the POS. Hopefully, in time, it'll come from other pieces of technology as well. And Maureen's big question, as we were talking this through, was also like, because the restaurant. A place like Union Square Cafe is obsessed with hospitality. People are staring at screens all day long. It's not ideal. What we started talking about was, well, how can we start to direct these signals to exactly the people who can kind of make best use of them? And I think something that a lot of folks have kind of been dreaming about for a while is the idea of actually making use of a wearable and making use of the watch to start to get into some of this stuff.
You want me to talk to these?
Go for it.
So we had started, just really thinking about what actionable items would really help with the service. And we're never looking for, I feel like I've said this a few times today, but we're never looking for technology to replace, if someone can have a conversation quicker than a technology can do that, then we're not going to have the technology do it. But we looked at really specific things key action items that we could essentially change and enhance the experience. And I think that, one of the big things is just with wine, the fact that SOMs are running all over the restaurant and that you're printing a paper chit when the order is put into the POS. And the fact that SOMs could be wearing a watch that could notify them of the bin number for the wine, the table that it's going to, the guest that's asking for it just is going to create so much efficiency. And if they're down in the wine cellar and they get another alert, we've thought through even that they have to be able to accept it so that it's verified that they're getting it, but it just means that the guest is going to get their wine that much faster, and they're going to be able to spend their time with that guest or other guests. And it's not just about the watch with these, the notification center. It's also about, we envision a world where we're going to have iPad minis next to our POS terminals, and there'll be a different view of the notification center. But for Union Square Cafe specifically, the coat room will be down the lower level. So we will be able to have, we could automatically have this when a check is closed, that a trigger says to the iPad mini down in the coat room, bring up table 123's coats, but we don't think that really fits in with our service model. So we're looking more towards where the server will just trigger it so that the coats will come up. And just really, as Ben talked about before, as far as interesting things, this will never happen at Union Square Cafe, I hope, but that if someone hasn't gotten a drink in a certain amount of time, that a trigger could go to someone's watch. But, it really is about the notification center, and then, that the watch is just a means of communication and a way to communicate that so that you're not walking around with an iPad mini. But, the way we envision it with opening would be that the managers would be wearing it and the SOMs. But, as with most people, they're wearing a long sleeve shirt or a suit jacket, so we don't see it. We've had many conversations about, would it interrupt service? I sit there and walk around with my own watch when it's going to light up, when it's not, and really making it enhance the hospitality model and not be in any way ever intrusive. And then I think, the sky's the limit as far as the things that we're talking about that we could do next.
Yeah. Is nobody a baseball fan? There's two good. I think we have time for some questions.
Yeah, so does anyone have any questions? I think someone has a mic, but you're close.
Really dumb question, but who's building out that profile? You've got pictures, you've got a lot of data. Is that all being built out by the restaurant or each individual?
Well, I think the key,
the question was who's building out that profile?
And I think that this is why it's important to think about it as data. Some of this is coming straight from data sources, right? We can set up a series of logic around the tags so that even the tags can be based on data. Tags like regular, all you need to do is just set a threshold, right? We know also geographically when people are using our app, we know where they're booking from. So if we see the person is booking from 3 blocks away several times, that's a pretty good signal to us that that's probably somebody who lives in the neighborhood. A lot of the things that we've been talking to the Union Square team about in terms of what do we want to know about the customer, it's really about their relationship to the restaurant, how often do they come, what's their spending behavior, what do they like when they're in the restaurant, and as we start to have a deeper integration into POS, and we'll have this for Union Square, we really can set parameters and have the profile populate. That's the key difference between, I think, what I would call kind of profile 1.0, which is text, and where we sort of have landed on our new profile, which is really much more. There's text there, of course. I think it's going to take a long time for the industry to get out of the habit of using text. But there's an opportunity for it to be much more signal-based.
So I just want to touch quickly on some of the other features of ResiOS that are really important to us. So, obviously there are a lot of systems out there that you can make a reservation with, but something that we really liked is the ability, as I said before, to SMS, send a text to the host if you're running late, so that you're not worried about you're not trying to get out of your meeting to make a phone call and then think you're going to lose your reservation. So that's critical for us. I think really understanding that when you make a reservation, we're no longer going to just know the person that made that reservation. We're going to know if that person has been invited to that reservation. We can potentially know every guest at that table, which is just incredible with guest metrics. And then, obviously Resi Pay is really important so that people can pay. We've all been out to dinner with friends and you have to leave and you just want to pay your share and go home, and that the ability to be able to do that is super exciting. So there's a lot of, this entire project is obviously guest focused.
I'm loud. Do you find that Resi is something that you have to let consumers know about, aside from restaurateurs, and say, hey, people who are going to eat at the restaurant, you should get a Resi account because you're going to go eat, or what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, our user acquisition strategy on the demand side, I would say it's safe to say it's kind of early days for us. We're driving, I think, a very healthy amount of incremental business to the revenue. 10 to 15% of reservations in New York are for most of our restaurants are coming through the app. So there's I think a very healthy user base there. And as over time, I think we're going to work with restaurants to understand like what they feel are the real important marketing levers, and start to pursue some of those as well.
And we didn't make this decision lightly. I mean, it was a long decision for us. I mean, we have a long-standing relationship with OpenTable as well, and they hold the guest database, and that's they're like Band-Aid. People just go to OpenTable to make reservations. So I think for us to do this and take a chance with a new product, there's no better time than with Union Square Cafe, because our guests are going to find us. They've been waiting for us to open. We can't open soon enough, so we're hoping that the word will spread.
Yeah. Sure, in the back.
Which point of sale will you be integrated with?
We're integrated with a bunch of different ones. For Union Square Cafe, it's Micros.
Huge problem to solve, and with limited time and resources, how are you deciding your order of operations of what features to ship yesterday versus today and tomorrow?
Everything that we do is driven by the restaurants that we're working with. The roadmap is 98 to 100% based on what restaurants are telling us they want, what restaurants are telling us they need. I mean, the Resi OS team, we keep a running log of all the requests, and in some cases it's like, well, when that hits 10, we'll build it. In some other cases, when we really value our partnerships. Part of this relationship is that Maureen and some of the Union Square hospitality leadership has joined our hospitality board, which is sort of our product guiding board, and we listen very, very closely. I mean, I think it's one of the things that, frankly, a lot of companies haven't done that well. It goes back to kind of how we see ultimately progress being made. It has to be a collaboration. Like there has to be much more of sort of a fundamental understanding of needs. If we're going to go and build products that get used. So we listen very, very closely to our restaurants, and I think I would wager to say if you asked anybody who's on our platform, they'll tell you that.
So, can you kind of paint the general picture though, like there's payments, there's reservations, there's all.
Oh, what are we working on?
Yeah.
What are we working on? We're working on all of it. Definitely, like this notification center, it's going to get more and more sophisticated. Payments, for us, payments is not just about Resi Pay, which is the consumer-facing mobile payments product, but it's about PCI-compliant credit card handling more holistically. So we're working on essentially, fully secure credit card handling, whether that's from if I'm buying my wife a bottle of wine, and I'm calling on the phone to buying a prepaid dining experience to paying for the meal, secure credit card handling is super important. That's probably what I would say is up next.
We're actually out of time. We're getting the please wrap.
Please
signal.
wrap.
Thank you,
All
everyone.
right, thanks.